Hello once again, everybody, and thank you for joining me here on this Tuesday, December 1st edition of ATS Radio. I'm your host, Adam Burke. I'll be joined today by Brian Blessing, the host of Sportsbook Radio and Vegas Hockey Hotline. We'll chat some NFL for Week 13 and talk about the last PGA Tour event here for the 2020 calendar year, the OHL Classic at Mayakoba. Pretty good field for that one this year, with it being the last tournament of 2020, so we'll break that one down for you here later on today's show. Over at ATS.io, we're covering the NFL, we're covering college football, we're covering college basketball, still following along with all the industry happenings. New round of sportsbook promotions will start coming out today, so we'll be able to write about those over at ATS.io. Make sure you download the ATS app, which you can find in the Google Play Store, in the Apple Store, or find direct links to download those in these stores over at ATS.io. Plenty of stuff going on over there for you to check out. Very busy time of year here, as you know, all these leagues kind of finding a way to make it work as well as they possibly can here to finish out 2020. And I'll have a lot more content throughout the week over at ATS.io. Traveling last week for the Thanksgiving holiday, kind of doing what I could to get by, but we'll focus and hone in a little bit more here for this week, both on the show and also over at the website. With that, we bring in Brian Blessing, the host of Sportsbook Radio and Vegas Hockey Hotline. And Brian, how's it going today, man?
Well, it's a little chilly here, but I'm not shoveling snow, so I guess it's good.
Yeah, I got home last night at 6:30. We left early from South Carolina to beat the bad weather. Woke up this morning and had to shovel my wife out of the driveway. So probably should have stayed at least one more day in the South, or just altogether said F it and just decided, you know what, I'm going to move somewhere warm.
Well, that would be the master plan.
Yeah, eventually. Eventually, that will definitely be the plan, whether I'm a snowbird 6 months out of the year or just, look, man, I love my home, but the older I get, the less I want to deal with this weather. Obviously, you get it. You left Buffalo.
I miss Buffalo every day. I just don't miss the weather. But I liked winter. I didn't mind winter. I couldn't stand spring. Spring was okay. I made it through winter. I liked the snow. I didn't even mind shoveling the snow. I just couldn't take March, April, and May. When I made it through winter, it was 55 and gray for 3 months. That was worse than winter.
I thought I was going to die this morning because it rained all day long yesterday. So it's that heavy, wet snow.
Oh, yeah. That's good. Mashed potatoes.
God, I thought I was going to die. My wife calls me after she finally gets to work. Her usual 10-minute commute takes 35 minutes. She calls. She goes, "Are you still alive? Do you still have a pulse?" I was like, "I don't know, barely, I think." But
do you have the setup where you have a driveway?
Yeah.
Do you do the thing where you do the sidewalks, you do the driveway?
Oh, the hell with the sidewalks! I don't use the sidewalks.
Yeah, that's fair. But you do the driveway. Well, yeah, you got to think of the mailman. But you do it, you put it all out, and then an hour after you're done, the plow comes by and makes this mountain at the foot of the driveway, and it's even worse than all the work you did.
Yeah. Yeah, that's probably what I'll get to contend with this afternoon, so she can get back in the driveway. Or
better you than me, man.
Or she can just live somewhere else for the night, whatever. All right, so let's chat some NFL here, and let's sort of recap what we saw last weekend here first before we look ahead to this week, which last week actually finishes on Wednesday with Baltimore and Pittsburgh. Was actually moved twice, in fact. Now they're going to play that game Wednesday afternoon. So week 12 not yet completed, but anything that stood out to you from here this past week?
Yeah, idiot coaches. It's always been my pet peeve. I know we've talked about it on this thing. I just don't understand why this stuff is so hard. We saw it again last night, down 11, 4th and 4 from whatever it was, the 20. In the fourth quarter, instead of kicking the field goal, Peterson goes for the first down. It's like, kick the field goal. You're down 8. It was moronic. It was like the whole world knew he should have done it. Then, even a common sense thing, the Chargers game with the Bills, Lynn twice, and believe me, the Chargers had every chance in that game. Lynn should have, the situation said, kick a field goal, and he's hemming and hawing, do I go for it, or do I kick the field goal? And they're running in and out, and he wastes a timeout in what would be a one-possession game to ultimately kick the field goal that, a A 10-year-old would have known kick the field goal. So he wasted time out in a one-possession game. But the thing that was really dumb at the end of the game, now it was dramatic from a spread perspective. For the second game in a row, the Bills give up a Hail Mary. This one they catch it like the 4-yard line with 20 seconds to go. So they get 3 kicks at covering the number, and they're down 10. So whatever, they throw 2 incomplete passes. But now there's 6 seconds left. They've got the ball at the 2-yard line, and they're down 10. And it's 4th down. Lynn goes for the touchdown, and they call an idiotic, which would have covered the number, and the books were screaming and yelling, and the Bills stopped it, and they didn't get the touchdown, so they didn't cover the number. But just from the game itself, the game perspective, I mean, if you were 8 years old, okay, let's see what happens. There's 6 seconds left. Let me get this touchdown. So then I get an onside kick with 1 second left. I'm going to be asking my kicker to kick a 75-yard field goal. Or kick the field goal, which he should have done. And if you get the onside kick, Herbert can throw it 70 yards. I mean, yes, it's a 1,000,000-to-1 shot, but the Bills just lost to Arizona on a Hail Mary. They just gave up a Hail Mary. But you know what I'm saying? It's like, can you think 13 seconds into the future? Like, if you got the onside kick, you got to throw a Hail Mary anyway. So take the field goal to at least give yourself that chance. I don't understand how these coaches have no clue what to do.
Yeah, I don't know either. It's funny because I had the Bills minus 5.5 in the circa, so I'm sweating that game on one of the apps on my phone because they didn't have Sunday ticket at the place that we were having lunch, of course. So I couldn't see what was or late lunch, so I couldn't see what was going on with the game or anything like that. And I'm furiously texting people, "What the hell is happening in this thing?" And that was one of the reasons why I ultimately decided on the Bills. Making one of my leans into a pick there is. They had the coaching advantage, and fortunately it happened to play out for me. But that is an epidemic in this league, man.
Why?
I don't know.
It's not hard.
It's
Then I'm sitting there watching the game last night with my wife, and the Eagles can't get out of their own way, and it changed the whole tenor of the game before halftime. Philly can't get a first down. Seattle jailhouse blitz. Wentz runs backwards 25 yards. Throws off his back foot out of the pocket. I go, that's grounding. And the referee goes, there is no grounding because the quarterback was outside the pocket and the ball reached the line of scrimmage. No, it didn't. There's a line judge standing at the line of scrimmage at the flag or at the stick. And he's standing here and the pass is 4 yards to his left short of first down. Like, how does a side judge not run up to the referee and go, it didn't make it to the line of scrimmage? And what ended up happening, Philly didn't get, would have been 3rd and 50. They ended up getting a first down, went down and got points right before halftime. It changed the whole tenor of the game because Russell Wilson would have got the ball back with 2 minutes to go and they go down and score again. And I'm sitting there going, how is that acceptable? I mean, referees, coaches, you're watching something that is pretty simple to me. And it's the simple things that these guys screw up every week. And I don't even think it's because we bet on this stuff. I mean, I don't know. I've always been that way. I mean, the minute the guy threw it, I go, it's grounding. But I think when you bet on this stuff, you're laser focused on it. But how do they get the most simplistic things wrong? And then replay. You're sitting there and, that was out. That ball was out. The announcers say that was out. They go to their referee expert guy and he goes, that was out. And then they come back and say, the call stands.
Yeah, I don't know. I had a buddy, my buddy posts on social media last night and he goes, look, he's like, I can unlock my truck from outside the country. I can see who's at my door when I'm not home. And in the NFL, they still use 2 guys with poles and chains to measure first downs. The guys, run in and put the ball kind of wherever the hell they want to. These are multi-million-dollar decisions with the placement of the ball, the spotting of the ball, and it's done in like the most archaic way possible. I don't know. I see it all the time on Twitter, during NFL Sundays. We bet actual dollars on this league, and we do. And I don't know if we're all sadists and masochists or what, but these, like, the coaching things, the replay, the officiating, all of it, God bless the people that win consistently at the NFL at, 56, 57, 58%, because there's a lot of bullshit you got to deal with to actually win bets with this thing.
You know what? Forgive me. I'm right. The exact number escapes me, but it might be almost every game, maybe one or two. But before I forget, we're talking about the Bills. It's an ATM machine. Bet the Bills in the first half. These guys come out of the gate. They always get going. How many games have they built a big lead and given it away? And you think they'd have finally learned a lesson? They were up 16 on Houston in the playoff game last year. They had the big lead on the Rams. The Rams came all the way back. You can make the case should have beat them. They got the interference call at the end, and the Bills won. Arizona, they had a big lead. They let them hang around. And Arizona, and the Bills ended up being behind again. Allen wins the game. They lose on a Hail Mary. And then they come out and they're just, like a cat playing with a toy, slapping the Chargers around. And then they're the worst third quarter team in the history of football. But the Bills have the lead at halftime. And then they're hanging on for dear life. Mark it down. Start making money on it. Bet the Bills in the first half. Fade them in the second.
Well, before we transition to Week 13 here, as I mentioned, Week 12 will finish Wednesday afternoon with Baltimore and Pittsburgh. Dallas and Baltimore on Thursday has been moved to, Tuesday, I think, of next week. So all sorts of shifting with the schedule here, probably because Pittsburgh wound up with some COVID positives too. It wound up not just being Baltimore, wound up being Pittsburgh as well. Pittsburgh's still a 10-point favorite, total 41.5 for this Wednesday afternoon game. No Lamar Jackson for Baltimore. It will be RG3. But a lot of guys affected really from both teams with this annoying illness. So you're going to have a play on Wednesday's game, or is this just way too strange of a scenario?
41.5 is pretty low. For a total,
especially for the current NFL.
It's like if it's you can see the Giants, or the Bengals, right, with that quarterback. Some of those games stuck out. The Dolphins and the Jets. I mean, you still have Roethlisberger slinging it around, and RG3 can probably. They're not going to get shut out. That total looks a little low to me. If the side, I'd steer clear of it. I mean, Baltimore. If Baltimore loses this game, and everyone's like, what's going on with these guys? They're on the outside looking in, but their schedule on the back end the rest of the way is Cupcake City. So, Baltimore's going to make a push. It's just probably not going to be here. The one thing I said, they better play this game. And there's two things. One, they better play this game because Denver's going to be sitting there going, you're kidding, right? We had to play a game with a guy we pulled out of a tailgating party at quarterback, and you're giving these guys day after day after day after day. Why is Baltimore-Pittsburgh getting special dispensation here? So this game's got to go. And then the other thing is a little interesting, and I hate to bring it back to the Bills. I mean, they're playing the Niners, which is no walk in the park because I think the Niners are playing good. And it could be a look-ahead spot for the Bills playing Pittsburgh. But you now have Pittsburgh. Mark this one down. You've got Pittsburgh playing Wednesday, Monday, and then having to play the Sunday night game at Buffalo. That's 3 games in a pretty short window. Pittsburgh's got a little revenge. Buffalo beat them last year, but last year was last year for Pittsburgh. But if I'm Pittsburgh, I mean, they got, I guess, the Baltimore and then Washington, who's actually playing pretty hard. But if you're sitting there going, where's the spot that Pittsburgh could stub their toe, having to play 3 games in a short window and then play the Bills, that might be the banana peel for Pittsburgh.
Yeah, I think so too. I think that, again, we're going to find some interesting spots, interesting pricing, going from playing on Wednesday to playing on Monday or Wednesday to Tuesday. That's something that's really never happened in the NFL before.
Yeah, you got a database for that?
No database for that. We can talk circadian rhythm if you want.
Oh, there you go.
Again, playing this random mid-afternoon time slot, just very strange for both of these teams. And, at least from Baltimore's side, seems sort of potentially self-inflicted with their trainer not masking up and all those kinds of things. So, I think it's also going to be interesting, too, to see how these things are kind of handled going forward, because, you know, it also looked at, and you and I talked about this last week, it looked like the line had been drawn in the sand. The NFL said, we're doing this, you figure it out. And these two teams were unable to figure it out. Game winds up getting moved twice. And then now you wonder, okay, well, you know, like you said, Denver can look at this and say, well, that wasn't fair for us at all, not having any of our quarterbacks. Pittsburgh was upset about losing their bye week, having games moved, stuff like that. But then they, of course, come down with some cases of their own. I don't know, but I don't think we're done with, you know, having to adjust this schedule and sort of figure things out on the fly. So,
well, they do not want the week 18. I mean, it's there, but they're sitting there going, we're not moving the Super Bowl because of this.
Right.
So I guess the point is it because there were so many guys and they felt it would be are the 2 days going to make a difference? The impact of, okay, these guys are infecting each other all over the place. And then how do we get back on the beam with these two teams? But for the life of me, how do you sit there and say to Denver, you know, you can play your game on Wednesday and then your quarterbacks can play. How does Denver get thrown to the wolves and Baltimore doesn't?
Because Baltimore and Pittsburgh are in the hunt. You know, if Denver was playing for anything, then, you know, that's probably a scenario where they probably end up moving the it is a double standard without a doubt. But
yeah, well, I mean, that's fine. You can say Denver's out of it, but what's Seattle saying? Or what's Green Bay saying? Really? Right. You just handed New Orleans a win?
Yeah.
I mean, Denver at home, they beat Miami. I mean, it's Taysom Hill, not Breeze. I don't think Denver would have been without a shot if Drew Lock was playing. So, yeah, we can sit there and say, yeah, Denver's irrelevant, but you know, you probably handing at the end of the day, you may look back on and say, oh yeah, New Orleans got a week off in the playoffs because they played Denver without a quarterback.
No, that's fair. No, that's very fair. I mean, I don't know what the solutions are, but you know, we'll see if the NFL has to come up with more of them on the fly here as they go forward. Like I said, no Thursday night game. It was supposed to feature Baltimore. They will play on Tuesday next week.
Make them play Wednesday, Thursday. Let's go.
Yeah, right?
Hockey players do it.
Yeah, well, in any event, no, it's fine. It's all good here. I guess we'll go into a highlight video with some of our thoughts for Week 13 here on ATS Radio. I'm host Adam Burke. That's Brian Blessing, the host of Sportsbook Radio and Vegas Hockey Hotline. And interesting game at the top of the board for Sunday here, Brian. Detroit and Chicago. Lions and Bears, NFC North rivalry. The standard issue 3 is where this game kind of sits now, but it's not where it sat at the open. In fact, Detroit was +6 in some places when this line came out. Now down to Detroit +3, 44.5 the total for this one. But obviously the big question here for the Lions is, now that Matt Patricia has been fired, and this has been a long time coming, how do they respond here in the month of December with, you know, a few games left to go?
Well, that's it. I mean, you get the change of head coach. Chicago's in free fall at the moment. Their defense had kept them in virtually every game, but then they just got mauled by Green Bay, and I wouldn't say there's any great disgrace in that. Trubisky looked better than Foles, but they were never, you know, in that game. Detroit, the guy in the home stretch here, and I think he might have been doing the slow pout. He hated Patricia. And every week in the injury report, oh, he's close, limited practice, and they kept holding him out. Watch Kenny Golladay come back and go absolutely bananas here in the final month of the season. I think he hated Patricia. And I think maybe across the board they hated Patricia. And it's in a one-off like this, I'd probably take a swing with Detroit, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's fair. There's really no redeeming quality for Chicago right now. I mean, it doesn't matter which quarterback plays. Neither one seems to be any good. As you mentioned, the defense has really had some issues here of late, and specifically in that game against Aaron Rodgers, where they just looked lifeless in the first half. Green Bay did whatever they wanted in that game, and you wonder about the mindset of Chicago as we go forward here as well. Maybe Detroit gets that one-game bump. I can't imagine Matt Stafford was too fond of Matt Patricia either. Stafford's had a rough year with COVID, and his wife's been very vocal about, you know, how everything's been handled and all those types of things too. So you wonder about Detroit and, how invested they still are. But, for our listeners that are maybe in one of the handicapping pools or in a pool where you're going to pick every game or something like that, it would be Detroit or nothing for me because at least there could be a spark this week. Yeah. I don't think there are any sparks left for Chicago. I think they're just, they're one of those dud fireworks, so to speak.
I mean, Detroit at least has offensive potential. Is that fair?
Yes.
I mean, and if you bring Galladay back, you can see a game where for a week where Stafford throws for 330 and they got the running backs can get it done. They're not setting the world on fire, but they're not hideous. And the Bears are just this plotty mess on offense.
No, I think that's definitely fair. How about this game in the AFC South? 455, 456, Indianapolis and Houston. Indianapolis -3, total 51.5 to 52 here for this game, pretty much the market-wide number. And, Brian, I think this is a really interesting game because Indianapolis is a team that a lot of us have been poking holes in the resume throughout the year because they played a very weak schedule. They get the rematch with Tennessee after doubling up the Titans on Thursday night a couple of weeks ago, and the Titans do whatever they want on offense in that game. Now Indianapolis goes down to a shorthanded Houston team without Will Fuller and Bradley Roby here, both popping positive tests for a banned substance. But at this point in time, I think we kind of see this across the NFL. You can kind of bet on effort levels for teams. And right now, Houston is still playing very hard for interim Romeo Crennel.
Hey, do me a favor. Give me it's circadian rhythm. Give me 2 or 3 more fancy analytics things.
I don't know. Man, don't put me on the spot like that. I'm just trying to figure out how to get back into my normal routine.
Well, did you do analytics when you shoveled the driveway?
No.
All right.
No, I did a lot of swearing when I shoveled the driveway.
All right. Sometimes this stuff, it ain't so hard. I mean, to be a rocket scientist and outthink yourself with all this crap. Last week, I think, I know I did a video. I'm assuming, I don't know what we did. Maybe we talked about it last week. The Tennessee game is like, Tennessee's playing at Indianapolis. And like, oh my God, this is the exact same game that I thought was the bet of the year 2 weeks ago. And that was Seattle had lost to Arizona and the Rams. They're tied atop the division at 6-3. But if Seattle loses to Arizona, they're 2 games behind Arizona. The division's gone. So Seattle is playing that game in week, 10. That's their season. It's a playoff game. And Seattle got revenge, punched him in the mouth, won the football game. Here's Tennessee. They get beat. They get smoked at home by Indy. They're tied atop the division. But if Tennessee loses to Indianapolis, the division is gone. They're 2 games basically behind them with Indy having swept them. It's like Tennessee has to win the football game. This is a playoff game for them. And oh, by the way, they are the net matchup nightmare of all matchup nightmares in the playoffs in a one-off because they can run the football. Tennessee went in there, ridiculously high-scoring game. Tennessee wins the game. It was a playoff game for Tennessee. If Tennessee and Indy play 10 times, they go 5-5. If Indy played Tennessee, that was like one of the bets of the year last week was Tennessee. They played again this week, I'm probably betting Indy. So the point is, you don't have to overthink this stuff. It's like situational things that dictate common sense without going overboard. So now Indy, they get maybe physically, that game took a toll on them. Houston's playing better. Houston has extra time to prepare. Everything's pointing to Houston. But I think Will Fuller getting suspended for 6 weeks, he's gone. As good as Watson is, Fuller is such a weapon in the ability to stretch the field, and this is a very good Indy defense that just gave up 45. I think Indy bounces back. I think I'm not convinced, Houston's got a good enough running game against this defense, and Fuller's absence points to me to Indianapolis. I don't know. There's a very long-winded answer, but it's like sometimes don't overthink this stuff. It's right there in front of you. Yeah,
I think this is one where I'm going to take a look at the Indianapolis Colts too. And, as you said, for a variety of different reasons. And, every week when I watch the Philadelphia Eagles, and I saw some people kind of talking about it last night, like, this is a, Doug Peterson team that beat the Patriots in the Super Bowl with Nick Foles. Like what is, how have they fallen so far? The answer is Frank Reich. The answer is Indianapolis head coach Frank Reich. He was the offensive coordinator for that Super Bowl. He did so many things with that offense to put them in positions to succeed. And I think this is what I like to call a get-right game for Indianapolis. I think this is an opportunity to, they got to go on the road and whatever. They're playing a team with extra rest. That's fine. It is what it is. But they're going on the road to play another inferior team, and we've seen Indianapolis have success this year with inferior teams. As I said, a lot of people have poked holes in their resume because of the strength of schedule that they've played. Now they're going back to that weak strength of schedule after losing that game to Tennessee, where, as you said, Tennessee had, everything to lose in that game, and they played like it. Houston really has nothing to lose. They're playing better. They're playing well for Cornell. He's not going to be named the full-time head coach. At least I don't think so. But now Watson loses another weapon when he was already short on them. It's got to be Indy here. And what surprised me a little bit is the line move coming off of 3.5 with the places that had it, coming down to 3 flat on the juice minus 110. That surprises me a little bit, but I think Indy is the play here in this game for sure.
Yeah. And, by the way, to boomerang back, because they're connected, not to talk out of both sides of my mouth, I think Indy will offset the fact that Houston has extra time to prepare, but Fuller's absence is a big deal to me. But I actually think the extra time to prepare, going back to the Detroit thing, is a big deal the first game with a new coach. So I think that back to the Detroit thing, the extra time is very beneficial with the new coach gearing up for that game. So they're kind of connected. Anyway,
I think so too. And also too, Patricia seems like a guy who's, quite frankly, kind of a dick. And now you get rid of that negative influence, and I can just go out there and have fun. We talk about this all the time with the NHL when the NHL's in season. When you're no longer playing for anything and you just kind of go out there and play,
well, that's
pressure's gone. It usually helps.
Who's the definition of that?
You tell me.
Pop quiz. I'll give you a guess. I'll give you one guess. Who's the definition of pressure's off? Just go out and play, and you don't want to play them. Okay, you're not going to get it, are you?
No, I'm not.
Atlanta.
Yeah.
I mean, look at last year. They're hopelessly out of it. The coach is going to get fired. They go on a Tootsie Roll at the end of the season. Now, Raheem Morris is there. They're 4-2. They probably dug too big a hole to have any say in the matter. The Raiders, in a letdown spot that we talked about, vomited all over themselves, and Atlanta was more than willing to take them to the woodshed. And we see this from Atlanta, and they did that without Julio Jones and Todd Gurley in the lineup. Atlanta is this, we're out of it? Okay, let's go kill somebody.
Yeah, and, to get to that game here, 463-464 against the Saints, keep in mind, when the Saints were at home against the Falcons a couple weeks ago, Taysom Hill was announced as the starter. We all thought it would be Jameis Winston. Winds up being Hill. The line craters. Saints actually closed as low as minus 2.5 at home in some places for that game. And I know that home field advantage is relatively non-existent here in the NFL this year. It's not strong if there's one at all to speak of. But let's say we give Atlanta at most a point for home field advantage here. At most. They're a 3-point underdog now at home when they were a 2.5-point underdog on the road against the Saints. So I understand that New Orleans has looked pretty good with Taysom Hill and the defense has figured it out and all that kind of thing. But at 3, Atlanta's the play here. I think this is an overreaction to what we've seen over the last couple of data points because, like you said, I think Atlanta's played really well. And all this number suggests to me is that New Orleans is the only team the market's paying attention to.
Yeah, and listen, give New Orleans full marks. They did this with Teddy Bridgewater last year, and now Taysom Hill's in, and they're finding ways. They're just a very, very good football team. They just played a couple of weeks ago. 24-9 was the final score.
And that's one, too, where Atlanta was off the bye. And I've talked about this. I think the bye is a detriment to teams because you can't do anything during your bye week. You can't practice. You can't go anywhere because you're trying to COVID. They looked flat from the jump. And then this past week, they looked like they were ready to go. So I think they're in a better spot here, not coming off the bye.
Yeah, that's a great point on the bye week this time around, where guys would hop on a plane and go down to the Cayman Islands for 4 days or something. Yeah, where are you going to go and what are you going to do? They're probably better served to keep playing football. That's actually a very interesting way to look at that. I like the over. I think Atlanta's competitive in the game. I still think, Hill does more than enough to have that offense move the sticks. And then when they get in the red zone, I think they're pretty good to run it down your throat with him or Kamar, or now Murray had a big game. But I think Atlanta's got things going a little bit here offensively. And historically, and I know it's not Breeze, but historically, there's always isn't there? I mean, every year a New Orleans Atlanta game, first game was 24-9. But isn't there always a New Orleans Atlanta game goes down to who's got it last, and it's like 41-38?
Yeah.
I think it's this week.
Well, and I think, too,
I like it over.
I mean, I think, too, as New Orleans works more with Taysom Hill, obviously the first game, you don't really know what to expect. There are a lot of questions. You wonder about how the play calling is going to look, stuff like that. Second game, they're playing in Denver against a decent Broncos defense in, the altitude and all that kind of thing. The further removed we get from Drew Brees, the more efficient I would expect New Orleans' offense to get. So I would think that, even though their defense is playing better, and that's kind of a sign here with the total coming down in this game to 46, I do think the offense gets more efficient, gets more creative. You find out more about what Taysom Hill can actually do, stuff like that. I agree with you. I think kind of going against the early money here this week isn't a bad idea on that total.
Yeah. No, just the nature of the beast when these guys get together. Atlanta's, think about it. I mean, Atlanta's 4-2 with Raheem Morris. We have talked about Quinn. When is he going to get lit up? When is it? We've been talking about that for how long? So that means those players had been talking about that or answering questions about that forever and a day. It's like a breath of fresh air for the core of that team that was just constantly being asked about the coach getting fired.
Yeah, no, it's an excellent point too. And you made a lot of excellent points over on our ATS YouTube page this week, doing videos on that New Orleans Atlanta game that we just talked about. Also videos for Cleveland, Tennessee, Rams and Arizona, and then also Bills and 49ers. So I encourage the listeners to definitely head over to our ATS YouTube page and check out Brian's thoughts on those 4 games. So I want to touch on a couple of other games that you didn't talk about on video here for this show, and one of them being Eagles and Packers. And the look-ahead line on this one was Packers in the -6.5 to -7.5 range, depending on where you look, after another debacle from the Eagles last night, who did cover the closing number, in kind of surprising fashion there with the late 2-point conversion. But now the number's 9. And this is in part because the Packers looked so good in their game against the Bears as well. The big thing, I think the talking point here this week, and I know you've got Philadelphia on a short week, so maybe Peterson will shy away from doing this, but you got to go with Jalen Hurts the rest of the way, right?
It was, you're watching that game last night. It's like the kid came in for a play or two, and then he goes back to, what are you tinkering around in the middle of games for? But see, there's a real problem. It's not just, it's a problem because right now that division's still there for the taking. The NFC East, as ridiculous as that sounds. But I saw this yesterday on Twitter or somewhere. I believe Carson Wentz makes $18 million this year. Next year he makes $38 million bucks. You better figure this out. Is this guy done? Is he done from what you're seeing? I mean,
he's got to be, right?
Well, part of it, though, is no one's open.
Yeah, that's true.
They showed this last night, and he holds on to the ball too long. Well, what do you want him to do? Well, he threw a horrible pick, but nobody's open. So it's I'm not saying he's not been atrocious, but he's got nothing. I mean, what's his name? Alshon Jeffries. It was like his first catch of the year last night. What are you talking about? They show the overhead thing, and there are all these guys running around. There's nobody open, and just a matter of time till Wentz gets pancakes. But yeah, the Hurts taking first team reps throughout the course of the week, so they're a whisper away from doing it. That was hideous. What we saw in that game against Seattle. You got to go to them at some point. It's Fisher cut bait, but I mean, it's a much broader discussion. Hey, by the way, how much grief did the Eagles take when they drafted a quarterback?
Yeah.
Remember the grief they took? Oh, what are they doing? Why would they take it? Well, I think we know why now.
And I think, there's a lot going on here. I don't think Carson Wentz will ever be healthy again. I think that's a big part of it. He's not 100%. He doesn't move around like a guy who's 100%. So that's part of it. And as you mentioned, not only is nobody getting open, but also the Eagles have just been ravaged by injuries basically 3 years in a row at almost every position on the field, but especially at the skill positions.
Am I missing something when you watch him? We know how good he was out of the gate. It just looks this way to me. Maybe the quirky motions, it's kind of a 3/4 arm. It's not as goofy as Phillip Rivers, but it's not far from it. But it's like this 3/4 shot put when he throws it. But his arm strength, it doesn't look like there's anything on the ball when he throws it, even if he tries to throw it downfield. He just looks like night and day. Like, is this anything near who the guy was when he came into the league?
Yeah, there's a lot going on there. I don't know if now is, the time that you make that move, especially, because maybe you could find a way to get out from some of that money next year, but they got to do something. And I don't know if Doug Peterson's the answer either. So, maybe that's something they need to evaluate at the end of the season here as well. Brian, one more game I want to ask you about on this video before we chat some golf to finish up today's show. What do you make of the Patriots being favored cross country against the Chargers? How about that one?
Yeah.
You're speechless.
I've not seen a team like the Chargers that just find the most remarkable ways to give football games away.
For years now, too.
Herbert, no, that Anthony Lynn stuff in the Bills game, the Bills were ripe. And you know what? The Bills were coming off a bye. Back to your point of the bye may not necessarily be a good thing. That game was there for the taking. The Bills' defense bailed them out in the second half of that game. And for the first time, Herbert looked pretty frustrated. There was just not much there for him to deal with. The chess match is going to be Belichick, and what is he going to take away from Herbert? And
Keenan Allen, right?
I would think you'd be looking at Keenan Allen, but they've got enough weapons that this kid's got the arm, and I think he's got a little gunslinger in him that, okay, you took Keenan Allen out, that he might be able to, with Williams and what's the one kid's name? Is it Guyton? They got one kid that just runs 9 routes, and he catches a 70-yarder every 3 weeks. And Eckler's back, and he didn't look bad at all. I kind of think this is the Chargers' spot here. New England is so one-dimensional to me that I don't think they can keep pace with the Chargers' offense. I think it's a mismatch, Herbert over Newton. I really do.
I think it's fair. I think that's such a tough game, especially because, again, Belichick will outcoach Anthony Lynn. That is the one guarantee that we have in this game. The question is, is Herbert good enough to to compensate for that? And to this point, I think Herbert's played really well this year, and their record is still poor, and they're having trouble against the spread too. So I don't know. But, as I look up and down this NFL card here, and I feel like I say this every week that I'm not a huge fan of the NFL card, but it's largely because, again, I think, a lot of these teams are very Jekyll and Hyde unless they're the elites or the super well-coached teams. And we got some big numbers on the board here this week, some numbers that will likely get bigger. You've got, the four teams, Washington, Pittsburgh, Dallas, Baltimore, on really strange setups now, maybe kind of like Washington a little bit against Pittsburgh. But looking up and down the card here, it's just again, you got teams that aren't great laying big numbers. Minnesota laying almost double digits, the Raiders laying over a touchdown after the egg that they dropped last week. Tricky week in the NFL, I think, here, Brian.
Just talking out some of the stuff we just did, I think there's some spots in there. I got the lean to Detroit.
Yeah.
I think
you are more of a totals guy than I am in the NFL.
I am way more. Well, in the NFL, it's funny. I'm a totals guy virtually in all sports. I do more sides in the NFL than any other sport. So I kind of like Detroit, kind of like Indy. I mean, this is the stuff we talked about. I can see the New Orleans Atlanta game over. We didn't. We got to go here, but we didn't talk about your boys. That's an interesting game, Cleveland, Tennessee. I think I kind of like Cleveland, to be honest with you. I mean, I think in a playoff game, I think Tennessee would take him to the woodshed, but Tennessee just played Indianapolis twice and Baltimore in the last 3 weeks. At some point, you got to wear down, and let's give Cleveland full marks. You know what? By the way, maybe that wasn't fair, because you know what? If Tennessee's dangerous because they got Derrick Henry and can run the ball, Cleveland is dangerous because they can run the ball. So you know what? I take that back. Cleveland might be a very tough out for somebody in the playoffs.
And Tennessee also played Pittsburgh before that first Indy game, right? I don't know if there was a game in between there or not, but they played Pittsburgh too. So Tennessee's played a very, very tough schedule here. And of course, the line movement in that Cleveland-Tennessee game is an indictment of the schedule that the Browns have played. A team that's 8-3 with a negative point differential. That's getting a lot of run here on social media. But we'll talk more about those games and all the games here throughout the week on ATS Radio. But make sure you check out our ATS YouTube page where Brian does have those 4 game breakdowns for us. Make sure you subscribe over there and subscribe to the full versions of the show as well.
This is going to sound nuts. Nah, it's nuts. They beat Houston 10-7. They beat the Eagles 22-17. They beat the Jags 27-25. Listen, Cleveland is like, yikes. They're 37-34. They beat the Bengals. I mean, these are not juggernaut teams. But you know what? They're winning. They're winning, and all this stuff seemed to come to fruition after OBJ hit the bricks. Yeah. I mean, I don't know if it's a more simplistic approach to the game that they're taking. And at some point, it becomes 8 in the box and, okay, go ahead, try to beat us. And, eventually it'll catch up with them. But they're entertaining. I mean, you got the cardiac kids back there. I mean, every game's close.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I'd rather play Cleveland at this point getting points as opposed to laying points because they don't create margin in any of their games. They really haven't throughout this season. The only game they've had some margin in was Washington. And Washington was -5 in turnover margin in that game. So the Browns just don't create a lot of margin, but by running the football, by moving the chains, they do end up with a lot of close games. So they're getting 6 now all of a sudden. That's one that's definitely on my short list here for this week. Real quickly, we'll finish up. Just want to make sure we talk golf just one last time here in 2020 with the OHL Classic out at Mayakoba. This is in Playa del Carmen down in Mexico, and I sure as hell wish I was there right now instead of being here in the snowy Cleveland area. But with that in mind, there are some guys playing this because it's the last tournament, but also, these guys, I mean, their lifestyle's been kind of cramped a little bit, not being able to travel as much, stuff like that. So maybe kind of hey, let's go on vacation, but also I'm going to play this golf tournament, try and win some money this weekend. We get Justin Thomas, Brooks Koepka, Abraham Answer, of course, Mexican-born player. Same thing for Carlos Ortiz. We got Daniel Berger in this thing, Tony Finau, Harris English, who's a past winner here. Pretty decent field south of the border.
And thank you. You just made the case for me. I said the one guy, to me, everybody's going to talk about Answer, and Ortiz just won. And the guy that's flying under the radar, who I honestly think is going to be a much better player than the other two, is Sebastian Munoz at 55-1. I think he's going to be real comfortable in his own skin down there. I like Sebastian Munoz, and take a little flyer with Gary Woodland at 60-1. Other than that, it's late in the year. Like I said, it's the last one. Guys have been in and out, up and down, off, back. I'll play those two guys. That's it. And then on Friday, going into the weekend, watch a couple of rounds and make a decision from there. So I'm treading lightly, but I think Munoz flies under the radar. That's an overlay. Believe me, if Carlos Ortiz is 45-1, Munoz should be 45-1. He's 55-1. He's the overlay. And Gary Woodland, man, we'll see. It has that David Duval thing all over it. He wins the U.S. Open. Everything was good. And then the guy comes back and, turned into this fitness guy and lost all this weight. And it's like, where did Gary Woodland go? Physically and literally. It didn't work for David Duval. If it ain't broke, don't fix it. But I think Gary Woodland can still play some golf, but see if he can salvage something out of the season.
I got some pretty big, I have some medium range prices and a few big prices that I like for this one. I think the fact that you've got guys like Thomas and Koepka and Finau and Berger there, those are all going to be the short prices. Harris English is a short price too, around 16-1. Victor Hovland is in this as well. What that does is it creates a little bit of price inflation on some of the guys that play this course regularly, play these types of events regularly. I've talked about this a lot. I like looking for guys that play well on coastal courses, vacation destinations, stuff like that. Guys that don't hit the ball a long way, but they just play really well. I don't know if they're comfortable in these settings or what it is, but this is a par 71 Greg Norman design. Wind could be a factor. Obviously, you're right on the Gulf of Mexico, but a guy like Joel Damon at 66-1, I think he's a pretty good player, good ball striker, accurate off the tee. That should help him here. Russell Knox has 3 top 10s here in his career. He's 80-1. Of course, a guy with a European Tour background, he'd be good if the wind kicks up. That's not a bad look. Bryce Garnett, actually one of the best players here all time in this tournament. He won in, I think, Puerto Rico or the Dominican or something like that. He's a guy who doesn't hit it all that far, but plays well in these vacation destinations. He's 150-1. If Pat Perez was healthier, I'd consider him. He's a past winner here, but he withdrew from a tournament a few weeks ago, and he's missed some cuts. But that's what I'm looking at, man. I'm looking at some triple-digit prices. Rory Sabatini,
why not?
125-1. He's a good player.
Can't win with a yellow golf ball. Yeah, it's been proven.
It's festive. You can win here.
It's not festive. It's annoying. The guy's out there playing with a range ball.
Well, next time I come out there, I'm just bringing sleeves of colored balls, and we'll have to go.
I've burned more money on Rory Sabatini, and then even took a shot with Bubba Watson in the Masters. You can't win with a yellow golf ball. Stop it.
Well,
you want to win you want to make $100,000 in sponsorship for playing with their yellow golf ball, or you want to go make $1 million and win a golf tournament? Duh.
Get one of the sportsbook directors you have on Sportsbook Radio to put up a year-long prop for you. Will a player with a yellow golf ball win a tournament? Yes, no. See if they'll do it for you.
Yeah, no, -$7 the way it's going.
Speaking of sportsbook directors and Sportsbook Radio, Brian Blessing hosts that show on a daily basis. In fact, I'll be on today's show with Brian. And Brian, how can people check out that show, and where can people find your work?
Well, it's good stuff. We get Sportsbook Radio. It was noon to 2. With the Vegas Hockey Hotline's 1 to 2 Pacific time. That's at kshp.com. If you're a hockey fan, a lot of good stuff there talking hockey. And hopefully these guys, the clock's ticking, man. They got to get their act together. Now, the Sportsbook Radio, which was noon to 1, it still is, but it's on the Sports Grid Radio Network. And now we do a standalone hour for Sports Grid Radio Pacific time at 11 o'clock. Adam's going to be on with us today. So we're on the Sports Grid Radio Network now. Bear with me. From 2 to 4 Eastern, 11 to 1 Pacific time. And the exciting thing is Sports Grid Radio is going to be on Sirius 204 starting on January 7th. So we'll be out and about, and I think that'll be a lot of fun. We're looking forward to that. So this is the start of our 4th week on Sports Grid Radio, and excited to what the future holds there. So it's good stuff. And on Twitter, Brian Blessing, basically anything we do, we get out there for you. And Adam will be on with us today.
Absolutely. And I'm definitely looking forward to it. Again, check out Brian's videos over on our ATS YouTube page as well. Brian Blessing, again, Sportsbook Radio, Vegas Hockey Hotline, Tuesdays here with me on ATS Radio, at Brian Blessing on Twitter. appreciate the time as always, man. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you again next week.
Let me see your shoveling motion.
I ain't getting up. My back hurts now.
Are you right-handed or left-handed?
I'm
or do you
right-handed.
switch?
Oh, no, not with no.
You're right-handed, so it's your lower left back that's always in peril.
My back hurts all the time, let alone when I'm shoveling. So, all right, man. Appreciate you coming on. Thank you so much. I'll talk to you later.
See you, buddy.
All right, there you go. There's Brian Blessing again, the host of Sportsbook Radio and Vegas Hockey Outline. Sportsbookradio.com, KSHP.com, and on the Sports Grid Radio Network. Coming up on Wednesday on our show here, ATS Radio, we'll chat with professional bettor and handicapper Kyle Hunter from HunterSportsPicks.com, talking college football as well as college basketball. Going to try to split the show in half with those two sports. Thursday, Brad Powers, we'll talk NFL and college football with him. Then Friday, week 13 in the Circus Sports Million, 33, 26, and 1 for my ATS.io-2 entry. We'll see how week 13 goes on Friday's show. That'll do it for me. Thank you so much for listening, everybody, and I will talk to you again tomorrow.